I've got a fun segment, and I can't remember if I had this post come out while we were in Nashville together or not. But there's a survey question that I don't expect any yes from either of you on. But a little band called Fugazi. Have either of you ever heard of Fugazi? Are they on your radar whatsoever?
Not me.
Like that much? Okay, you've
Yeah.
seen the name.
Yeah.
This is part of and I mean, I could probably do, because I just want to tell Ben in particular, I want to tell you Steve Albini stories for days. There's a great Steve Albini story about where he and Fugazi, then this burgeoning, well, let me start with this. So Fugazi is basically in the late 70s, early 80s, there's this DC punk rock hardcore movement, and Minor Threat is kind of the defining band of this era. Everybody else comes in to copy Minor Threat and what they're doing with the speed, the breakdowns, the style, this entire like almost religious level straight edge movement that gets labeled on top of the lead singer Ian MacKaye and his stance on drugs and alcohol and cheap shows and all ages and all these things. And as soon as they get to a certain size and he realizes that everybody's copying them and expecting them to do the same thing, he kills the band. Like, nope, it's done. Don't need that anymore. This is beyond the scope of what I want to do. What am I supposed to do? Make it moshier, make it louder, make it faster. I'm not interested in just perpetuating this thing that's now a formula. And so the hardcore scene really gets off and running like almost after Minor Threat disbands, but after they've influenced literally everybody who then is going to copy it for the next 10 plus years ad nauseum. One of the really cool things that happens is he goes and he rejoins some of his friends in DC and they start this band called Fugazi. And some other things happen in the middle. They do a couple of albums. There's a great thing when they're finally hitting that upswing, and it's right before when punk breaks, when grunge is exploding on the scene. Fugazi is temporarily like every band when they're on tour, like Eddie Vedder's there with Pearl Jam, Nirvana's there. And they're like, can you show us, like they get to DC, it's like, can you show us where Ian lives? We want to see where Ian and Guy live. We want to see the house. Like they're that legendary. They go to Chicago to record this album with Steve Albini, who then is the guy who ends up doing In Utero, and he does PJ Harvey, and he does The Breeders, and he's the sound of the 80s and the 90s, and a great musician in his own right. They record an album together. They're all jazzed about it. And both the band and Steve Albini just go, we had fun, but it wasn't good enough. It doesn't capture the essence. Like, would have been the most legendary combo. And they were like, no, just kill it. So I say this as preamble because if you don't know any of the backstory of Fugazi, it's ethics and community all the way down the most beautiful and profound way. So I have to tell you the story about why you can't buy a Fugazi t-shirt. And as a 90s kid, this is one of those things where you just want to rep your favorite bands the hardest. You want to get this piece of gear, and there is no Fugazi shirt anywhere ever. Now, the band has this whole thing, and again, community and ethics is like the superseding thing. No scale without community and ethics first. So the band notoriously would charge $5 for entrance to a show. That is really cheap. Even by like the mid to late 90s, bands are charging 20, 50, soon to be 80s and hundreds of dollars in Ticketmaster and all those scandals. And Fugazi is still out there going, we mostly want to only play at clubs where we can rent the hall. So we don't want to go in and have somebody else set up sound and security and all that stuff. We want to come in, we want to rent the room, we only want to charge $5. We don't even want a bar in the room. We want the show to be all ages so that anybody who can afford to come can get in the door. And if you can't afford to come, we're probably still going to get you in if you want to come in because we want you to experience this music. They look at this whole thing and they go, everybody's telling them you should have merch. They've already got like Ian MacKaye starts Discord Records, phenomenal record label with the same ethic. They know how to make money. They know how to do this. They know how to build a small survivable profit margin into everything they do. They are not communists. But so now the merch question comes in. You guys have to have merch. You got to have shirts, hats, pins, all the stuff. And they think about it. They're like, okay, the cost to print the shirts, transport the shirts to shows. We're going to need a merch guy to sit at the table and sell the shirts. There's no way we can do this without increasing the sticker price to our shows. That doesn't meet our community and ethics standards. What did Fugazi never, ever friggin' have? Shirts. Once some guy, all of a sudden these shirts show up on the scene. I remember a couple of them around the neighborhood. A couple of skater kids have them. And it says, this is not a Fugazi shirt. It's like, what is this? So it turns out some guy in Boston basically has this whole call with Ian and is like, can I please make a Fugazi shirt? He's like, no. He's like, okay, I won't make a Fugazi shirt. I'll screen print up shirts that say, this is not a Fugazi shirt. He tracks him down. Ian tracks this guy down. And he goes, you know what? You're funny. You're funny. But what I want you to do is we're going to see if you're good at math as much as you're good at being clever and a comedian here. I want you to calculate the profit you would give a band if you'd make these shirts and give them to a charity. And I found a great scene. It's on a Cultish Creative blog post about this. The guy who made the shirts actually made a charitable donation with the proceeds of the shirts from the band's proceeds after the request of the conversation with Ian to a women's shelter in Boston for all the years that he was in business over those shirts.
That's amazing, Matt.
That's such a cool story.
Fugazi put ethics and community over scale over and over and over and over and over again. Discord Records still doing the same thing. Ian Mackay's still out there doing this stuff. It's a wonderful and magical thing. They have a song. It's called Merchandise. The line of the song is merchandise keeps us in line. Common sense, it's by design. What could a businessman ever want more than to have us sucking in his store? We owe you nothing. You have no control. You are not what you own. Those words are imprinted on my brain in that merchandise song. These lessons and stories about you put ethics and community, I felt them so strongly at that conference of saying, this is what's first, not the scale, nothing else. The experience of the people in this room who choose to gather here and do this performance together. I don't know if I'm going to convert you guys into Fugazi fans, but I know you'll appreciate that story.